I'm so excited for today's episode.
Yay!
Because you and I are very new friends, but our energies are very in sync.
So aligned.
So aligned.
Seriously.
We literally met one time, and then at Dear Media this weekend, I turn around, you're right there, and like instantly, it was just like we gravitated towards each other.
Yeah.
Had the whole day together, and the entire time you were talking, I'm like, there's something about you that is so interesting to me.
Thank
and
you.
it just like draws people in. So I'm really excited to get to know you better.
I can't
get to know what
wait.
makes you you, girlfriend.
I'm so happy. I remember the day that I met you and I was like, I just met the most beautiful, tall, kind woman. And then I'm like, I follow her on Instagram. She's fucking Miss Arizona. I'm like, what the fuck? I'm like, this woman is amazing. I need to be friends with her. And so I saw you and I'm like, this is my chance.
Mission accomplished.
This is where I infiltrate.
Literally. And you were good at it.
It was
Instantly, it's like, hey, you want to spend the entire day together?
Yeah. Hey, I'm here alone.
And I was going alone too. And then at the last second, my sister was like, no, I'm in, tap me in.
Yeah.
And it ended up being perfect because the three of us just had the best time ever.
I know.
Best time.
I feel like I was meant to meet your sister. I feel like the three of us were just meant to vibe.
Yeah.
It was the best time, seriously.
We really were. And I feel like I got so much out of that day
Yeah.
in general. But when we came into the studio today, you were telling me all about working through those limiting beliefs.
Yes.
And I think this is something that so many of our listeners can totally relate to because showing up somewhere alone is terrifying.
It can be so scary.
It's so, even
it's
when you're confident.
Yeah,
even when you're
exactly.
confident, it's still scary.
It's
so
like-
walk me through that.
Right. And so for me, I'm a big, can I cuss? Is that okay?
Absolutely.
Okay, cool. I'm like an OG bad bitch. So for me, I'm like, okay, I'm a bad bitch. All my clothes are amazing. My nails are always done. I always look good. But then you go alone and you're like, oh, everyone's staring at me. Like that was truly what I felt when I walked in. Like there's a lot going on at Dear Media IRL. And I was like, oh my God, I'm overstimulated. There's a lot of people. Everybody looks so pretty. Everybody's here with their friend groups. And then I'm like looking around, where should I sit? Or where can I sit with like my right ticket? Because I didn't get to go last year. And I'm like, I feel like everyone's staring at me. I'm texting my husband like, oh, I'm so nervous. Like, I don't know if I should have come. I'm like, let me just get a coffee, like realign my energy. And I'm in line to get coffee. And one of my beautiful, amazing podcast listeners found me. She was with a group of friends and like turned around. She just stops me and she goes, are you Mikayla Jai? And I said, yes, bitch, I am. Hi. And she's like, I love your podcast. I listen to you every single day. She was like, so amazing. So I was like, okay, you know what? I can relax. Like these are my people. And if they listen to the shows that I like listening to, and if I literally meet one of my listeners there, then these are my people. Like it's going to be okay. I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to go find a seat, plant my little roots. And when I walk in, I found you and I'm like, okay, this is exactly why I was meant to come alone, because one of my friends thought about going and then she couldn't last minute because she left for a trip on Sunday morning. And I was like, you know what? I was meant to be there alone so I could spend time with you guys.
Yeah. And
so that we could kind of go through the day and go through like the other limiting beliefs I had. And it was just, I wouldn't have gone through any of those mindset shifts had I not gone alone.
Yeah.
And that's the beauty of doing things that are uncomfortable and outside your comfort zone.
And you left feeling so much better than even when you walked in.
Yeah.
And I think that's a testament to anytime you push yourself outside of your comfort zone, even if it works out very differently than how you anticipated it would work out.
Yeah.
You can take away that fuel and learn that lesson so that next time a situation or an event or something comes up and you're questioning, should I go alone because I don't have anybody else? It's like you're proving to yourself, well, last time I did it, look what happened.
And I didn't die. That's
and I
always
didn't
what
die.
I think. I didn't die.
I didn't die.
And I've gone to a couple events here in Austin all by myself. And every time I get something out of it, like the first event I went to, I discovered the studio that I am having my podcast event in. And I would have never found that space if I hadn't gone to that event. So it's like, great, I got that out of it. I went to another event and I met like one of my best friends here. And so I always remind myself, like, I didn't die and I get X, Y, and Z out of this. I can do it again. And it's going to be nerve wracking. It's not like after the first time you're like, great, I'm comfortable, can go anywhere alone, you know? And I've like traveled the world alone. So it's like really weird that I get nervous, but that just means you're constantly stretching yourself into something new. And if you're not growing, you're dying. And we're growing and we didn't die.
And we didn't die.
We didn't die.
I freaking love that.
Yeah.
Now, I need to know what makes you you. Because I'm so interested in every little snippet you've told me along the day. You're like, yeah, no, I lived in Bali for 3 months by myself. I'm like, I'm sorry, what?
Like, what?
And then you're like, yeah, I was in a 6-year relationship, dumped him, met my husband, got married 6 months later. I'm like, okay, hold on. We got to backtrack.
Right.
You also, I need to hype you up real quick, have multiple successful businesses. You're an independent podcast host that has almost 4 million. 4 million downloads. Like that's unheard of for a solo podcaster. So take me back to like baby MJ, far before you ever had any knowledge about manifestation. Tell me about your upbringing. Tell me all about your life.
Oh my gosh. Well, the one thing I always love to say and kind of start with is I always tell people I was a self-proclaimed pessimist, which when you meet me now makes no sense.
Yeah.
Right. I remember in high school, like complaining about something to my mom, and she's like, Mikayla, like you're being so negative. Like all you're doing is complaining right now. And I go, well, I'm a pessimist. That's what we do. Like I remember that so vividly, and that's so not me, which is crazy.
So not you.
And what really started like my spiritual awakening and me getting into manifestation and really working on my mindset is I was like in a fuck this, draw the line in the sand moment. I was living in a house, and I haven't told you this story, so this is going to be so good.
I love your stories.
I was living in a house that we call in MJ world, my raccoon girl era, because the house had a hole in the ceiling, and it was after my childhood home had been foreclosed. So while I was in college, our home got foreclosed. My mom and my brother packed up our entire house, and we moved it into my grandfather's house upstairs, which was like a 2-bedroom, really old stained floors house. And we didn't talk to my grandfather either. So it was like already super awkward. And we like lived upstairs and he lived downstairs. But there was a hole in the ceiling, and like raccoons would fall in, and it was in the kitchen. And so my mom like set up one of those like wardrobe separators. So if like a raccoon came in or something, that at least it was like kind of tucked away in the corner with like boxes under it, so we could like still have our kitchen. And it was disgusting. The tub in the shower like wouldn't drain, and it was me, my mom, and my best friend Caleb living there at the time. And so it's like if one person showered, you were like literally showering like your feet in their bathwater. It was so gross. And I was in a really horrible mindset because also your environment impacts you so much. So I was already had like this really shit upbringing. I had already been like out on my own since I was 15 years old. And then I'm like living in this raccoon house, like in the summer between my college life, which I also hated college. So it was just one thing after another. And I had this moment where I looked in the mirror one day and I was like rock bottom depressed. And I remember thinking to myself, like something has to change and it has to start with me. And I don't know where it came from. Nobody around me was positive. Nobody around me was spiritual. Nobody around me focused on their beliefs or said anything positive ever, because we were all in this like shit environment, right? And I really feel like the universe just like spoke to me that day when I was looking at myself in the mirror, and I knew something had to change, and I couldn't change my surrounding environments or anything until I actually studied abroad. And I probably left from my study abroad like 2 weeks after that or something. And I didn't know anybody going from my college. I studied abroad in France for like 6 weeks or something.
That's so sick.
It was so amazing.
France.
I love France. I was studying French in college. So it was so perfect, but I didn't know anybody. And so I remember sitting my layover, because I'm originally from Nebraska. My layover was in Dallas, Fort Worth. And I remember sitting there with my journal, and I was like, you know what? I'm just going to be the version of me I've always wanted to be. Like all I ever wanted my whole life was to be this girl who lit up every room she walked into, who made everybody feel so seen, so comfortable, like so energized. But I was never that because I was so negative. And I told myself like, okay, I'm going on the study abroad trip where no one knows me. I can be that. They don't know that I'm negative. They don't know I live in the raccoon house. Like they don't know any of these things about me. They don't know my dad's in prison. I can just show up and just be Mikayla. And that's what I did. And I swore to myself, this is how everything started, that I wouldn't complain, I wouldn't gossip, and I wouldn't be negative for the entire time. And I stuck to that. And there were days that was really hard, and I would get in my journal and I would kind of rant it out, but I literally would not speak any of that out loud. And it changed my life. I became a completely different person because now I'm only focusing on the good things. And when you're in France in the summer and there's no aircon, you're like walking and sweating all the time. And I'm like, wow, I'm just so grateful to be in France. You know, not thinking about how hot I am. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm so grateful that I have this takeaway coffee and then I get to like go home and like open my window in my French bedroom, you know, and it just makes you appreciate things. So it changed my life. I came home a completely new bitch, literally. And when I came home, I actually lost a lot of my friends because, you know, you bond with people over mutual dislikings of people in high school and just drama and like stupid shit. And so I lost some of those friends because now I was like the annoying positive friend. And in that time that I was no longer going out, I just started working on my mindset and really started to journal and really got into manifestation. And that's kind of what brought me here.
Wow.
which was wild.
When you put energy out there for good things start happening.
Yeah.
And it's the same, like, not to get too technical, but I learned all about the reticular activating system, which I know you know all about, but it's your brain literally has a filter in it that if you're constantly saying and thinking negative things, it's going to continue showing you negative things.
Yes.
If you are constantly putting out good vibes, positive energy, you're going to keep seeing the good. That's going to get reinforced. I am mind blown by everything you just said, from the raccoon house to studying abroad. Like, that's sick. But you also dropped in there that your dad's in prison and that you've been alone since you were 15. Will you bring me back to 15-year-old MJ? And where did that pessimism come from? Were you surrounded by it?
Yeah, it was a really negative household, a really toxic household. My dad and I do not speak. We're not on speaking terms. I don't think he's a good person. And it got to a point where it's like, this is kind of fast forward and then I'll take it back, but I was always like trying with my dad. And I have a really strong philosophy that there's no trying, only doing. And I was always trying at this relationship, but he was never changing. So like, is the relationship working or not? And there's no trying. It is or it isn't, and it isn't. And I realized that he was somebody that every time I would approach a conversation with, I would end up being disappointed, or like I would lose energy from the interaction. And so that's something that I had to cut off. But when I was 15, my parents split up. I chose to live at home. I didn't want to choose a parent. I chose living at home because it was also closer to my high school. And my dad kind of pieced out. And so me and my mom weren't really talking at the time. And she was going through her own stuff. She was very depressed, and she was going through a divorce with like a horrible man. And so I definitely don't blame anything on her at all. And like have made a lot of peace with that and with the whole situation. But my dad kind of pieced out for his girlfriend that he had in a different state. And I remember so vividly the day he told me, like, Mikayla, I'm going to go see XYZ woman in Tennessee, and I'll be back in 2 weeks. And again, like, I'm 15. That's so inappropriate. Like, for
so inappropriate.
Like, you can leave your 15-year-old alone after school, or like, okay, maybe like on a Saturday, right? But like, you shouldn't be like leaving your kid for like weeks.
You need your parent at that age.
And I had a car, but it was broken down. I was also 15, so I just have like a permit. And like he didn't leave me any money for food, like literally nothing. It was just like me and my 2 dogs. And luckily I was working at the time. And I would like get rides to work. And so I could like manage, but he just like left me to fend on my own. And he didn't come back for like 3 months. And it was,
oh my God,
crazy. And when he did come back, it was the College World Series, which is like the college like baseball tournament that we have in Omaha. And he was like, hey, I'm bringing my girlfriend back with me. I need you to go stay somewhere else. After he'd been gone for months, and he would like leave me on red, because at the time iPhones didn't have the choice to like turn off red receipts, right? So I would be like, hey, the water's shut off. I'm showering at the gym. Like, what do we do? And he would like read it and not respond.
Okay, we got to stay on here for a hot second, because
crazy.
I'm very sorry that that's what you experienced growing up, because that is not how any child deserves to be treated. And 15, you're still a child. Literally still a minor under their care.
Yeah.
How do you go from having that experience and, like you said, trying to have a relationship with him? And what I'm hearing too is like, you're trying to get validation and like feel like you're good enough in his eyes. And this is really the only man in your life up until this point. What did that do for your self-esteem and your confidence, feeling like you couldn't get that?
It was so hard.
Love.
It was so hard. I feel like that was one of my biggest limiting beliefs for a really long time, is I'm not good enough. Like, I wasn't good enough to have a relationship with my mom when I was younger, and I wasn't good enough for my dad to stay. I wasn't good enough. And even after, so my dad went to prison, and then he got out of prison. When he got out of prison, I wasn't good enough for him to put in effort, even though I was there for him while he was in prison. And it was just like,
so you were still trying.
Still trying to fix the relationship. And it was like, okay, I'm not good enough for him to put in effort, but then he goes and adopts another daughter and puts in all this effort with her. So I'm still not good enough, but she is, right? So there's all this evidence. But here's the thing about our mindsets and the reticular activating system. When we decide something's true, that's all the only lens you're going to see it in. And the main way I got over it is I kind of came to this realization after doing a lot of healing and a lot of being angry. You know, one of my favorite exercises for this, if anybody's listening and they feel like they have like a shitty memory, whether it's with a parent, a past relationship, a friend, whatever, I do forgiveness letters. And so for the first part of it, and it kind of goes in like 4 parts. The first part, I just write my raw feelings. Like if I'm pissed, if I'm sad, if I'm disappointed, if something's annoying, like whatever I'm feeling, I will just rant it out for as long as I need to. And then after that, I will find the lessons of like, I know this is horrible, but I learned how to be an adult. And because of that, I started my business at 20 years old and I've been running it for 6 years. So like, if I hadn't learned to be an adult, I probably wouldn't have done that. I had this huge spiritual awakening. Like I like became this independent person. I didn't let anything hold me back because I came from nothing, you know? So then you find the lessons and then you give the forgiveness, and the last send off part of it is you burn the letter. Like you don't ever give it to anybody. You just burn it because it's for you. Forgiveness is for us.
It's your own healing.
Exactly. And so I really struggled with the good enough thing, and I would do a lot of the forgiveness letters. And what I realized was he actually wasn't good enough for me. And I think that's something we need to remember when it comes to like friends, past relationships, some family members that don't get on board, right? Because unfortunately, it's like very common for people to have like really horrible family relationships, and these people aren't good enough for you. They know they can't show up for you in the way that you deserve, and so they don't. And then we take on the blame ourselves. And that's something I've kind of made my mission, really being a manifestation coach and somebody who teaches how to shift your mindset, is getting to the core of the limiting belief and asking yourself, is this actually true? Is it because I wasn't good enough? No. It's because they made poor choices for themselves and for their life. And unfortunately, I was impacted, but it had nothing to do with me. They just weren't good enough for me. Wow. Because if they were, then they would have made different decisions.
That's so powerful.
Yeah.
That's so powerful. And you're able to talk about it from such a place of healing. And like, you've already obviously gone through the work and you've done all of this.
Yeah.
And I think there's probably a handful of our listeners right now that if you're setting up those boundaries and trying to forgive somebody that is your blood, it's a different level of hurt, because you can kind of do that with friends and it still is very painful, or other people that come in and out of your life. But blood relationships are really difficult to go through that healing and boundaries. At what point were you like, okay, we have no contact, no relationship?
Yeah. It was after he got out of prison the first time. Unfortunately for everyone listening, he's back again. So after he got out, I really worked on our relationship, or I thought I did, but you can only meet people where they're at, right? And so he got into a new relationship and kind of adopted this new family. And I remember we had would talk on and off every few months, or he always watched my Instagram stories. And so he would comment on that. And I think to him that was effort. I don't know. And I was actually living in Bali, rewatching Gossip Girl. This is so random. Rewatching Gossip Girl for the second time. And it was in the season where Bart Bass dies, right?
Okay.
And I just remember pausing the episode and being like, I should appreciate my dad because he's alive, I should be working on this. Maybe I need to be more lenient, whatever. And I called him immediately. It was the middle of the day in Bali, and it was 11 PM, the last day, in the States. And I was I just was thinking about our relationship, and I think that we need to work on making things better because you're alive and I want you a part of my life. And we had this really great healing conversation. And then at the end, he was by the way, I'm adopting my wife's daughter. And I was oh my gosh, so triggering. And he was she really deserves this, that, whatever. We had a conversation, and I just felt so disappointed. And I still kept going through the relationship after, because I was you know what? I believe so strongly in self-accountability. So I was let me show up to my 110%. And if it really doesn't change, I know I did everything I could. And it got to that point where I would show up, and he just wasn't showing up in the same way, wouldn't check in on me or anything. And it felt I was putting in all of the effort. And it got to a point where there was a year where he would say happy birthday, happy Thanksgiving. I would text him happy birthday and then Merry Christmas. And those were the only and you would see it in the text thread, and that was it. No other check-ins. And I just knew I was done, because I had to come to that realization of I am worth more effort than this. And the longer I entertain this, what message is that sending to the universe? I'm imagine how many manifestations that's blocking because I'm tolerating this low vibration, low effort energy. Where are my standards at? And what does that say about me continuing those relationships? And I also understand it's so hard to cut off a family member, especially a parent. I have friends who still struggle with that, who have parents that put in low effort and haven't had that moment of power to cut it off. But for me, I was I can't keep doing this. And so I just cold turkey stopped talking, stopped texting back. And he said happy birthday, and I never responded, and I never heard from him again.
Wow.
And that's how you know it's the right choice, right? Because the confirmation is going to come right away. And I will forget that I have a dad sometimes. And I think the power is I'll remember it because I'll hear a story. And now I have an amazing father-in-law who I love to death. And so like he'll call or text and I'm like, oh my God, yeah, like fathers are a thing. It's kind of like the reminder I'll get. And I'll think, you know what? I've made so much peace with it. I'm glad that I don't have him in my life because I'll literally bring it to the point of like, that's just another person I would have to constantly update about things going on in my life. And my life is full of people that want to put in effort and that actually deserve to hear what's going on in my life.
Absolutely. And his behavior has never been a reflection on you or your worth.
Yeah.
And
never.
coming to terms with that and coming to peace with that and genuinely feeling at peace with that. Did you have to go through any kind of therapy working through this? Were you basically self-taught, taking yourself through things? How did you learn about like the forgiveness letter? Like where did you hear about these things?
I think a lot of the practices that I now teach and talk about, I have like truly just like downloaded and kind of created myself. I went to therapy for a short while. But mainly because I dated this really shitty guy and he told me I should go to therapy. He was a narcissist. He was like, you should go back to therapy. And my therapy sessions were always about him.
Oh, he's literally like gaslighting you into doing
therapy.
something that's supposed to be good for you.
Yeah. And then I would just talk about how horrible he was every week. And my therapist was like, you need to dump him. And then I was like, no, but this, and then eventually, obviously we broke up, thank God. So I did therapy for a while because I was gaslighted into it.
Oh my God.
Which is crazy.
Do you think your standards for dating early on were low because of the love that you had been given from your dad and you just thought you deserved that?
Because I would start by saying these like nice guys and I'd be like, oh my God, you're nice. You're nice to me. And I dated somebody for a very long time who was a nice guy. And then I was like, okay, I realized I deserve more than a nice guy and I wanted other things. And then I found somebody that was a reflection of that, but they were it was just a front.
It was a front.
And then I was like, ooh.
And that's very typical in narcissists, right?
Yeah.
That they are very charming, that they do have a front.
Yeah.
Right? But it's like they're lacking that true empathy. Like they're not capable of putting you first.
It's crazy. And that was another moment where I was like, I had to up my standards. Yeah. And it was like the weekend I was going to dump him. He beat me to it. So,
you know what?
So it all worked out.
Thank God.
And then I met my husband. And by the time, like after that breakup, there was obviously a time where I was single. And in that time I was single, I had I'm a big journal girl. Like I write everything down. It's so good for me. After the breakup, right after my ex left, I opened up my journal. I wrote 2 full pages of every single thing I would want in a future man, like down to a T. And then I met my husband months later and he was every single part of that because I was like, okay, I'd gone through all of these shitty situations with men, whether it was just men that were underachieving or like lack of effort or just being horrible people, or like my brother and I had a falling out. So there was more examples of like the ways I didn't want to interact with men in my life. And so that's the beauty of things not working out and you not liking things. It shows you what you do want. And I talk about this all the time with my clients and my girls on the podcast. Like if you are in a place where like, I don't know what I want, I just don't want this. I ask them, what's the opposite of that? You don't want to live in this situation. What's the opposite of that? Being in an apartment you love with natural lighting and not living with roommates. Like what is the opposite of what you have right now? And when you can look at life with that lens of being able to find the positive in every single thing and find the learning moment, your life is going to unlock so much freedom.
So much. Now, you mentioned that you were living in Bali.
Yes.
So you have
all these lifetimes happening all at the same time.
You have a spiritual awakening.
Yes.
And explain to people that have never heard that term before. What in your lens is a spiritual awakening? What was your experience with that?
For me, and it sounds so woo, right? And I'm so glad you asked that question. A spiritual awakening for me, I just felt aware. I feel like I woke up and I realized I was self-aware and that I could be in control of my thoughts. Because when I looked at myself in the mirror and I was like, something's got to change. It's got to start with me. I feel like I woke up in that moment and it was like that rock bottom where I was like, we all feel that. I just can't keep doing things this way. And in that moment, you have 2 choices. Keep complaining and keep doing it that way or change. And I changed. And the fact that I took that action in another direction opened up this reality where I was like, oh, wait, when I change my mindset to being positive, when I stop gossiping and just appreciate people around me rather than people I don't vibe with, when I just enjoy what's going on around me, I get more of that. And so the spiritual awakening was seeing my power for the first time of that. When I change the things that I look at, the world changes for me. And that unlocked so much because then I came back and I started really diving into my mindset. And I'm like, okay, well, if I change these things I was thinking about, imagine the other things I'm thinking about that I'm not even focused on. And so I basically rewired my entire brain.
Love that.
And after 9 months of really deep diving, I felt like I understand this manifestation thing, because I first was talking about like positivity, and that's really what I was working towards. And then I was like, okay, I want to blog. Like I want to write about my travels. I want to write about how I stay organized in school. And so I was listening to podcasts way before Podcasts Were Cool. This is in 2017. Okay. So like very beginning podcast stages. And I was listening to like how to make your blog profitable and like how to add ads to your blog, cause I was like, oh, this could be a fun side hustle in college. And people were talking about like trusting the universe. Like, okay, you're going to keep going. You're going to keep being consistent. The numbers aren't going to be there, but you're going to trust that the universe is going to bring the people, bring the opportunities. And I was like, the fuck is the universe? And then they'd be like, you're manifesting, you're co-creating with the universe. And I was like, what does that mean? And so then I would dive deeper into that by listening to other podcasts, and then creating these practices that I now teach. And so after 9 months of feeling like I really understood, I felt a moral obligation to start teaching people, because I'm like, if I can change my life from that, then I can change anybody's life and or leave them with some sort of mindset shift. And I can make it girly. I can make it accessible. I can remind you can buy Louis Vuitton and also meditate with crystals, and it's not weird, right? Like you can be all these things. I mean, like right before we were recording this, I'm like lighting Palo Santo and we're like dancing to like Cardi B and Megan Thee Stallion, like that's how we do things around here. And so I was like, I have to teach girls that all these tools I just stumbled upon, because nobody was talking about it in my world. And so I was like, I need to get this out there. So the spiritual awakening was realizing that I actually had the power to change things in my life, which then made me obsessed with changing my mind, which then made me obsessed with helping other people do it too.
Your purpose always comes from a painful chapter. But since you chose to look back and see all the different lessons, you chose to make those changes. Mm-hmm. And I really want people to hear that when you're speaking, that nothing that you have in your life right now ever would have happened if you didn't make the conscious choice, not just when you had the spiritual awakening. Mm-hmm. You have to choose it every day. You have to continue choosing that I want to show up as that version of myself. So when do you decide I'm going to go travel to Bali all by myself? Are you on a manifestation journey doing that? Were you just like, I just want to go travel? Like, what was your thoughts about why Bali?
Why that happened? So it was after I had already started my podcast. I'd already started my business, and I was already deep into my manifestation journey, and I had vision boards all over my walls, like tons. Like it was like, I would just print out all these photos from Pinterest that I was so inspired by for the life I was creating. And I print out like a money goal. I printed out a Range Rover, which I have the Range Rover now. I printed out like all of these trips, like first class flights to Paris, which I've done, Bali, which I've been to. And I just like was like, this is the life that I want to live. Like, this is what I want. And I remember seeing videos online of like these girls going on like these trips in tropical places and riding on the bikes and having their hair flow in the wind. And I was like, oh, I want that. Like nobody where I'm from has that. I've never even seen that. That's the beauty of the internet too. Like when you surround yourself with those positive influences and those inspiring people, not people you compare yourself to or get jealous of, but you're like, holy shit, I want that. Like, thank God.
They show you what's possible.
Yeah. Thank God that girl posted that video. So I knew that there was this small island in Indonesia across the world that I could visit. So it was on, because I saw a video and it was on my vision board. And I remember talking to one of my friends and I was like, I just really feel like I want to take that leap. Like this is going to be crazy. And I bought a one-way ticket before I had moved. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to go over there and then I'm going to travel around and we'll just see what happens. I knew literally nothing about Bali. I got to the airport. My connecting flight was in Toronto and they wouldn't let me get on the plane because you need like a ticket out because I didn't know visas were a thing. Like I had no idea. I was like 20 years old, just like fucking bopping around. And that's just such a testament to me. Like, I'm just always willing to figure it out as I go. And so for me, I was like, I'm going to go to Bali and like live this dream vacation that has been on my vision board. And I totally manifested it, found the perfect plane ticket. I got upgraded to premium economy and I had never flown premium economy. I was like, this is amazing. And I found like the most perfect villas and had the best time. I ended up going to Bali, which is in Indonesia. I spent time in Thailand, Singapore, Japan, Hawaii before I came back home. Did I go to Vancouver that summer? Yeah. Then Vancouver. And then I was in LA, and then I was in Palm Springs, back to Vancouver. And then I went home, and it was like this tour, and I was gone for like a whole summer, in between college semesters. And that was the life I wanted to live so bad. And I think the girls that I talk to, like in my business and on my podcast, like we just want these like freedom lives, because that's what makes us feel alive and fulfilled. And Bali really brought that out of me. And so when I came home, I was like, I need to go back. And that's when I bought a ticket. And then I ended up living there for 4 months during COVID. And it was the best time ever.
That's the coolest way to spend COVID.
Right? Oh my gosh. I'm like, sorry, you guys are like literally fighting over paper towels. I'm at the beach club. Sending love.
Sending love. XOXO.
And when I flew back to the States, I was still living in Nebraska, but I knew I was going to be moving to LA. And so I flew back to LA to like tour houses, and there was like tape X's on the ground for like 6 feet apart at like the grocery stores. And people were waiting in line to go to the grocery store. And I was like, what's going on here?
What is this?
I was like, what have I missed? I'm like coming off the best plane ride home, because it's like 5 people on the plane, right? And I'm like, what is going on in here?
Wild.
It was crazy. But my intuition actually brought me to Bali and made me stay in Bali. This is crazy. So I had planned when I was going to Bali, I was supposed to spend a month there. I actually was in Mexico and then flew directly from Mexico because I was hosting a retreat, went to a wedding, and then flew to Bali. And I went to a retreat for myself, and then I was staying, and then I was supposed to go to Australia, and then I was supposed to go to Vancouver and go home. And it was going to be like this 3-month trip. And I was supposed to go to Australia to help one of my friends with an event she was hosting. But after being in Bali for 2 weeks, I was like, I have to stay. I just felt something in me that was like, you need to stay. I had just met this like huge group of amazing people that were entrepreneurs that were like so high vibe. And I was like, I need to stay and like spend more time in this circle. And I couldn't figure out why I felt that way. And I felt so bad canceling the event with my friend. I was like, I know you wanted my help, but my intuition is telling me so loud. I stayed. I dropped out of college. I didn't go to Australia. And I kid you not, like 2 weeks later is when COVID broke out. And had I gone to Australia, I either would have been stuck in Australia, which not horrible, but they also had very intense lockdowns. Yeah. I either would have been stuck in Australia, or I would have gone back home to Nebraska, and I would have been really depressed being stuck in a home in an apartment that I didn't like. And so it was like my intuition was protecting me from COVID before it even happened. It was insane.
That's so wild. That's so wild. Yeah. Something that you said really stuck with me, that you were looking on social media and you were exposed to the fact that these women were living lives where they were traveling to Bali, where they were able to fly business class. They were able to do all these things. And I think so many people see that and their gut reaction is envy. And then the second reaction is, I can't do that.
Yeah.
Or I could never do that.
Right.
And then it's this whole jealousy game instead of what you did, where you're like, okay, that's possible.
Yeah.
And I want to talk about the importance of vision boards, because I think people are like, ugh, it doesn't really make that big of a difference.
Yeah.
Right. But if you literally are showing yourself constantly the life that you want to live, the things that you want to do, and it's front of mind. I know we already talked about the reticular activating system, but like the best way to be able to execute those. Yeah. So very like granularly, I want to detail your process of making a vision board, so that if anybody's listening that's never done this before, how did you start it? And then tell me, you execute a handful of those things like your Range Rover and your Bali trip, but how are you doing it right now? If you were to set a goal right now, what would you do?
Okay, well, I'm going to let you guys in on a goal that the whole side of my internet already knows about. I am manifesting buying a Lambo truck this year.
Let's go.
The Lambo truck has been something I've wanted for years and years and years. And this is the year that I'm like, I'm tired of saying I want the Lambo truck. I'm getting the Lambo truck this year. My house keychain is the yellow Lambo truck I want. My phone background is me standing in front of a yellow Lambo truck. Like I just take photos in front of people's cars. And I have that photo on my vision board. So how I vision board things is I write down, and this is like very specific. So it's
good.
A mini masterclass on vision board. So I have 3 priorities for the year. And this year they are business growth, my health and my fitness, and then magnetism, like the idea of just being a magnetic human. It's just when I feel the most fulfilled, because when I'm being my most self, then I'm always the most magnetic. So those are my 3 priorities. So then under those priorities, what are the actual goals? So it's like, it might be a weight loss goal. It might be signing up for dance, like my dance membership. I was actually going to try out for a dance team this year here in Austin, but they ended up not doing auditions, which was such a bummer. But I was going to try out for a semi-professional dance team. So it was like, I wrote down all of these goals for business. It's like, okay, hitting 6 million downloads on the podcast, starting a video podcast. Now I record in this beautiful studio as well, right? So I write down all very specific things. How much money I want to make in my business this year. With magnetism, it's like, what trips do I want to go on just for myself? Because when I travel, I feel so expanded. So I write down all of those goals in the priorities, because there's so many goals that we have in life. And I think when we like willy-nilly write down like 30 goals, we feel a little all over the place.
And they're loose goals, right?
Exactly.
There's no action plan.
There's no action plan. There's no end goal. Because when I see these 3 things, like the more magnetic I am, the more my business grows. The more I'm on top of my health and fitness, the more my business grows, because the more confident I am and the more I show up. And then the more confident I am, the more I show up, the more my magnetism grows. They all tie in a loop of this vision I have for my life. So what's the vision you have for your life? What are the priorities that stick out? What are the goals under the priorities? And then I will take photos of those exact things, like exact trips that I want to take, like retreats that I want to host. You know, I'm doing a retreat. I just did a retreat in Palm Springs last month. I'm doing a retreat in Florida this summer and another one in Curacao this summer. And like, so it's like, I have all of those on my vision board. I have the Lambo Truck on my vision board. So I think where people get messed up with the vision boards is they just slap together some pretty Pinterest photos and they don't mean anything. Every single photo on my vision board means something to me. And even if it's like a random photo, for example, like it might be like a YSL bag, because one of the things I want to do this year is I want to go back to Paris Fashion Week, which I've gone to once before and it was so cool. And so I'm manifesting another invite to go in the fall, because my husband and I are already going to Europe. And so like, we're just planning the trip around Fashion Week, and naturally I'm going to find a way to get a ticket again. So like, I have like a YSL bag on there. And for me, that means Fashion Week. I also have a photo of me trying on a Fendi bag that I want to buy while I'm in Europe. So that's on there. Every single thing is purposeful. And a lot of people like will save things, but it doesn't mean anything to you. Mm-hmm. So what's your vision? What are your priorities? What are the goals under the priorities? Because also you can have priorities and not know what that actually means to you. These goals are what create the priorities and the vision for the priorities, and then take photos of all of those things and put it on the board. And then my other hot tip for this is, as you accomplish things, you add in your own photos. So one of the things I had on my board was to launch a live podcast event, and I did, and I sold it out in 3 weeks. So I have a screenshot of it sold out on Eventbrite on my vision board. So I just swapped out the photos. I had a normal Lambo truck, and then when I was in Palm Springs, there was one right outside of one of the restaurants. I took photos, swapped it out, because your brain will associate the success of those things with the whole board, because now your brain's thinking, okay, I achieved those things, so that must mean I achieved all these other things. Mm-hmm. And the more certain you are, the more the manifestations can come through. So that's my process.
So powerful. Yeah. I did a Mindset Monday episode, I think 3 weeks ago. It was called If You Wanted To, You Would. And I talked all about a want without an action plan is just wishful thinking.
Yep.
And I'm guilty of doing it too, where it's like, I want to, for a long time, I'm like, I want to travel the world. Mm-hmm. And then it was like, no, I actually just really want to go to Positano and have an Aperol Spritz. Like very specific.
Amen.
Right? Yep. Then it's like, okay.
What does travel the world mean?
Exactly.
People
what does that
say
mean?
That all the time. And you're like,
what does that mean?
The fuck does that mean? I want to be in shape. What does that mean for you? I
Exactly.
want to see a photo on your board. And I know this is weird, but of that fitness influencer you follow on Instagram, screenshot her shit. That's why she posts it, to inspire you. Mm-hmm. Like,
exactly.
I know you think it's weird. It's not.
It's not weird. And it's also
being
like
clear.
This is a difference between people that are living the lives and the ones that are just watching you live your life.
Yeah.
And once you actually create an action plan, and I'm a big believer, and I talk about this in my course as well, that you have to have such a deep why behind it. Just like how you're saying that you want to go to Paris Fashion Week because you have this deep why associated with it. And you're like, I'm going to make that happen.
Exactly.
Because there's a deep emotion behind it.
Because you care enough.
Exactly.
And I always tell my girls, like, let's say there's something you want and you see something online. You're like, oh, I want this so bad. She has it. I want it. I want it. I want it. And you haven't taken the action. I always ask them, why don't you care enough? Why don't you care enough? If you cared enough, you would do something about it. for me, when I think about the Lambo truck, like this car is $250,000. And I think like, I want that so badly. I'm willing to continually put all the money aside for that to happen. Like I'm willing to do that because I want it that bad. I'd rather spend the money there and like save the money there than spend money on X, Y, and Z other thing. Because when you have your priorities and you allow yourself to want it, but also know you can have it, you're going to take the action steps forward.
Without a doubt.
Yeah. Every single time.
Something I love about you too, because I feel like all manifestation coaches, or at least the ones that I've been exposed to on social media, are very earthy, for lack of a better word. That it's like they're doing yoga retreats and like not wearing designer clothes.
Right.
And not like...
They're like,
a girly
light workers.
Exactly. They are very soft-spoken.
Yeah.
Like it's just a different vibe than when you told me that you're a manifestation coach.
Yeah.
But then I see like your bougie ass lifestyle
and
that
like,
I absolutely love. It makes me so happy because I'm like, I feel like I can relate to you.
Yeah.
And
like I'm a real person.
A real person.
Yeah.
That
I don't have like
really
dreads and like cliff jump and stuff like that. Yeah.
No, not quite. Tell me about the first time that you set your eyes on a bougie ass thing and you hadn't yet accomplished it. So like you didn't have that track record. What was that first thing for you? Because I'm sure that you have like a very vivid memory.
Oh man. Like the first time I got it and I set my eyes on, I will never forget buying my first Louis Vuitton bag in Paris. Oh, it was from my study abroad trip because I had already had that moment where I was like, I'm going to change. And I sat in Dallas, Fort Worth, and I was like, I'm not going to complain, not going to do anything. And the universe immediately tested me. I got to the airport, my luggage had like busted. So they like wrapped it up. And then I was meeting one of my French friends because I had already been to France before. She like came up to Paris, like hang out with me for a couple of days before I went to my study abroad city. And I had to like drag all my suitcases through the metro and it was pouring rain and we got lost. It was like every single thing was bad, but I was like, I'm okay. I'm in Paris. I am grateful, you know? And so after we're like drenched in rain, we like have these plans to go shopping. And so I was like, let me change my outfit really quick. Like, it's not going to be like super cute, but you know, I'm like, I really want to shop. And I saw the Louis Vuitton bag I wanted. They had one left and one girl was holding it because she was deciding whether or not she wanted to buy it. And she set it down and like walked away. And I was like, I want this. And I was terrified. It was like 600 euros. And it was probably like the most I'd ever spent on something at the time. And I was like, but I want this so bad. I literally didn't know how I was going to like pay for like food and like going out the rest of the study abroad. I was like, I don't know why I'm doing this, but like I want it so bad. I have been on my vision board. I always loved Louis Vuitton growing up. My original plan was going to college studying fashion and French, and I was going to go all the way through to get my doctorate in fashion social media because I wanted to be the CEO of LVMH. That was my life plan. And so it was like having that moment and I bought it and I was like, holy shit. And I have like videos of me like holding my little bag and they served us champagne and I was like, this is crazy. You know, like I'm a raccoon girl. That was going straight from the raccoon house to France. Wow. And like, here I am buying this bag and it is that moment where you feel like this isn't me. This isn't the life I should be having, but this is the life that I'm making for myself. And it was so powerful because it was before I really kind of woke up to anything. And that was like a purchase and an action step that I could really put the transformation into of like, you know what? I'm changing my life for the better. I'm becoming a more elevated version of myself. And this is a symbol of that because I don't want to be negative, complaining and like look like shit and carry this Louis Vuitton bag I just spent a lot of money on for me at the time. And so it also helped me elevate myself, which is why I love luxury because it reminds you that you are worth investing in yourself and having things that are of quality. They do impact how you feel because now you view yourself as a quality person and that also helps your mindset.
You carry yourself differently.
Yeah.
You absolutely do.
And I did with that little Louis bag. I still have it to this day.
You will have it forever.
Oh, I'm sure I will. Yeah.
I love it.
I'm obsessed with it.
So for anybody that doesn't understand what we're talking about, when we just went through vision boards, manifestation.
Okay.
We kind of talked about like the art of manifesting when it comes to your vision board.
Yeah.
But if somebody is genuinely like right now, I have no idea how to manifest, don't even know what that means. What would you tell somebody that's never been exposed to it?
Absolutely. So the actual like textbook definition of manifestation is to bring about to the eye. Like to manifest is a verb, to bring about to the eye. So that means every single thing in our life is a manifestation. You getting coffee every morning is a manifestation. You think I want coffee and then you go get a coffee. So you brought that about to the eye. You decide I want avocado toast at the restaurant. You order the avocado toast. That's a manifestation. You brought about to the eye, to your real life. And this works for feelings too, because people are like, oh, you only talk about material things. It's like, no, you're missing the point. Because you can see feelings on people. You can see when somebody's happy. You have the vision of yourself being happy. And when you see somebody who's genuinely happy or genuinely in love, they see different to bring about to the eye. So that's the actual definition of manifestation. Just everything is once in your head and then once in real life, including feelings, including energy. For me, I wanted to feel magnetic. I wanted to be that girl who lit up every room. That looks different when you are her and when you're not. It's kind of like, I think it's Marilyn Monroe who was like, you want to see me be her. And then she would just change and everybody would start noticing her on the street. That's manifestation. And so with that in mind, we get to take radical self-responsibility that every single thing in our life is a manifestation. Every choice you make is a manifestation. But when we are wanting to step into like these vision board lives, how do we actually do that? I have this like 4-step process that I go through. So the first one is clarity. And that's the beauty of having the vision board, because you get really clear on what do you want? Like, if there was nothing off limits, what would you want to have? What would you desire? And people don't let themselves dream that way oftentimes. And so you have to get into that practice. And if that's uncomfortable for you, write that every single day. What do I want today? What do I desire today? And it doesn't have to make sense. It doesn't have to happen today, but just get used to what do I want? So the first step is clarity. The second is matching the vibe. Okay. Being in the energy of that manifestation is what makes it happen so much faster. So when we see people talk about manifesting online, typically they're talking about it in how do we achieve our goals faster is really what we're getting at. And people think that you just like meditate and it shows up. That's not how it works. But what they're doing is they're activating the law of attraction, which is like attracts like. And that comes from the reticular activating system. When we are looking at the world in a positive light, that's what we get reflected back to us. So the second step of this process, matching the vibe. How would you be acting? How would you be feeling? How would you look? How would you present yourself? How would you talk if you had this thing you desire? For me with the Lambo truck, like let's just take that example. I know exactly what Lambo truck I want. Interior, stitching, rims, color, everything. That's what I want. Okay. If I already had it, I would feel like I fucking made it. I'd be like, holy shit, I had this Lambo truck. And I would want to keep it super clean. And I would think about, and every day when I get dressed, I think about what outfit would I wear in the Lambo truck? Like, I'm not going to wear sweatpants in the Lambo truck. Like, sorry. Like, that's just me. I'm like, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to look put together. I'm going to have my designer bag, right? So then showing up in my life every single day in that way and keeping my current car clean, like keeping my Tesla clean, making sure I'm putting on nice outfits every time I get in the car and getting excited every time I get in my Tesla, just like I would get excited being in the Lambo truck. Because once you're in that energy, you then actually want to take the action, which is the third step, is taking action towards the desire. Because now I'm excited. Now I'm happy about my outfit and I'm happy about how my car looks. And I can't wait for this to be a Lambo truck. And I can't wait to have Lamborghini with my little nails on the, steering wheel photo. So what do I feel called to do to make this happen? How much money do I need to set aside in savings? Like what else do I need to do in work to generate more income, right? That's where we actually take the practical actions to, again, bring about to the eye. So each step in this process is bringing it about. The clarity brings that into your head. The matching the vibe brings that into your energy. The taking the action brings it into like what I call the 3D, like into real life. And the fourth step is trusting the process. Because this doesn't do anything if you don't actually trust that you can have what you want. And I think people get really attached to their desires and really attached to their manifestations. And they're like, where is it? Where is it? Where is it? When's it going to be here? How am I going to do it? How am I going to do it? Babe, like take a breather, okay? It's going to be here because you're matching the energy and you're putting in the work. You're matching the energy, you're putting in the work. You have to trust the process. Sometimes it's not going to happen overnight. I've been working on the Lambo truck for a while. It's not here yet, but I know it's going to be. And so I don't need to obsessively think about it. And when you can have that element of trust of knowing I showed up and I took my action and I can let it go. And again, I'll wake up tomorrow, I'll decide what I want, I'll be in the vibe and I'll take my action and trust, that compounds. And that's what builds in your manifestations with ease.
So the way that you're explaining manifestation, it's different than I've ever heard anybody talk about it before.
Really?
Much more thorough, and I love it.
Yeah.
But I like that we broke it down so far because it just clicked something in my mind that even if you don't believe in manifestation or you don't believe that you're manifesting things, you're doing it every day.
It's happening all the time.
So what's the difference between manifesting and like life just happening? Are they really the same thing?
Life, I think they're the same thing, because when life's just like happening, and when I think about like pre-spiritual awakening MJ, when I was like really negative, and this is why I know manifestation works and law of attraction is always happening, because I kept manifesting my life getting worse and worse and worse. When I think about high school into college before I had that moment, every year got worse than the last. My freshman year of high school, I had a horrible eating disorder. My like sophomore year, my parents got divorced and I was living alone. My junior year was like the depths of living alone. My senior year was my dad in prison. Like, you know, it was just like one thing after another, right? And it's because I kept being negative, and that snowballs. And so I look at that time in my life and I take responsibility for it. Of course, like I'm not the one that can handle my parents leaving or, you know, whatever, but I can see how I was a match for those situations to happen in my life, because that's the mindset I was building. And that's the reality that gets reflected back. And even if I can't change any of those circumstances, like I was the one being negative about it. So I could have changed my unhappiness. It was my fault that I was so unhappy, because I let all of my external circumstances mean so much about me that I hated myself and I hated my life. But that wasn't written in stone. I could have picked something different. And so life is happening based off of what you choose to believe and what you choose to see. And so if you don't believe in manifesting, it's like it's happening anyways. All of the time.
It's scientific.
It
like
is.
Your brain is doing it, whether or not you believe in it, whether or not you're aware of it.
Yep.
And the saying, life is less about what happens to you and what happens for you. That's what pops in my head when you're saying like, you couldn't have changed your circumstances.
Right.
You couldn't have changed the environment that you grew up in. You couldn't have changed your dad's behavior. You couldn't have changed the environment that you were living in.
Right.
But if you had the tools, and given like, it's easy to say this now when we're grown adults.
Yeah.
But even for people that are still living in the past and letting the past really define them and thinking that their future is going to look the same way as their past did, I think it's taking the intentional step about, it's not happening to me, it happened for me. And how do I shift my perspective and do that mindset work? Because then once you're aware of how to take control of your brain and your mindset is when you can see manifestation at play.
And everything changes.
Everything changes.
And it's like, call it manifestation, call it goal setting, call it whatever you
Call
want.
it law of attraction.
Yeah, call it anything. But, and I always say manifestation is like girly, or manifestation is girly goal setting. That's always what I say.
I like that.
Because that's all that it is. It's setting your goals and being more intentional about it. Like it's always happening. And a client asked me a couple of months ago, like, do you always believe in this? Or do you ever have a moment where you like doubt the idea of manifesting? I'm like, I don't doubt it, because I lived the opposite of intentional manifestation. I saw what in firsthand real life, what it was like to not take my life seriously into my own hands. And we're in control of so much more than we think we are. And when people are listening to this and you're like, I have no clue where to start. One, you can start with that manifestation process. But two, if you feel like you're so disempowered in your life right now, you just have to work on reactions versus responses, because that would have changed my life very early on. I was really reactive to every single thing in my environment. Being somebody would say something mean to me in high school, it would ruin my whole day, right? Something would go wrong at work, it would ruin my whole night. It would ruin like one little thing. I would just constantly react to everything. And it doesn't have to be that way. If I had chosen to just respond and be like, wow, that might have been a really shitty thing of someone to say, but that's a reflection of them, not me. I don't choose for that to be true about my life. Wow, this happened in my family. That's really hard. That's not my identity. Just because this is something happening in my family doesn't mean that's who I am. I don't have to associate with that. And choosing, how do you want to respond to things? That's how you start to take control of your life. And then when you are being responsive all of the time, you see how your life changes, and then you feel empowered to move forward with the manifestations.
Absolutely. And you're human. I'm sure it's still a practice that you have to constantly apply.
Always.
That when stuff goes on, when shit hits the fan, is like you have to just remember to practice what you preach. I'm so curious, selfishly, and this will also benefit our listeners, like your mornings when you're waking up, are you journaling right away? Are you setting intentions for the day? Like, how do you put this in practice from the moment that your consciousness like starts to wake up?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I have a hatch alarm, of course. Why would I not?
Are those worth the hype?
Yes.
People love them. So it wakes you up really slowly by light?
Yes. So our alarm's at 5 a.m. because my husband is a welder and goes to work far too early. But I'm a supportive wife, so whatever. So the light, because it mimics like the sunrise. And so the light starts at 4:30. And so it like slowly starts. And then at 5:00, it wakes us up with jazz music. It's so nice.
Oh, how fun.
Yeah. And you get to like pick all these things, right? But it can also wake you up with a morning meditation. So if you are somebody who wants to like get into this, and if you already have a hatch alarm, great. Start using the morning meditation that's literally in the app, because that's going to help you be more intentional and be more aware of your thoughts. So like you can set it where it'll start the meditation like 15 minutes before waking up, so it gently wakes you up. So I start my morning like being woken up very gently, because when we have these intense alarms, you like jolt awake.
It's reactive
and you're already reacting. So we have a really slow way of waking up. I don't get on my phone first thing. D&D is on a lot of the day, honestly, especially because I get a lot of work messages from clients and different things. And if I'm in the zone with something, like there's designated times for everything. So I don't get on my phone. And the first thing I do every single morning is I drink Celtic salt water. So we're just going to get really specific.
Good.
I love Celtic salt water because it brings the minerals back into the water we're drinking. Especially in America, our water is really, really, really filtered, and it takes out the bad stuff, but also the good stuff. And then we are not hydrated enough. That's why we can drink a gallon of water and still feel thirsty. I think that's not normal. So I'll like drink that to like really hydrate myself first thing, because also your body is a part of the manifestation process. If your body is all out of whack, you're not sleeping well, you're not hydrated, you're not fueled with like nutritious foods, you're not going to be able to sustain these up levels that come from shifting your mindset and manifesting big things.
Yeah.
So hydration first. And then movement is the first thing I do on my day. So I'll either go to the gym, or I'll go on like a hot girl walk, and then I'll put on a podcast and immediately start listening to something positive, something growth oriented. So there's kind of a couple of things that I do every single day, and the order changes, but that's how the morning goes every single time.
Okay.
So there's always movement. There's always a hot girl walk. Walking is so good. Like I get over 10K steps every single day. I need that space to think. It moves so much energy in your body, and it feels so good. So there's movement, there's steps. There is journaling every single day, but it happens at a different point in the day. So like, let's say I'm coming to the studio at 10 a.m. I'm probably not going to journal before coming in, but I might go home. Like after this, I'll probably take a walk and then journal when I get home while like I have lunch. So there's journaling at some point in the day. I meditate every single day at some point in the day, and I sage and I Palo Santo. So for anybody who has like, what the fuck did you just say? Sage and Palo Santo. Like sage is an herb. Palo Santo is like this wood stick, and you sage with the windows open. That's very important to cleanse the energy of the space. It like takes out all of like the negative energy, and then you Palo Santo to bring in the good energy. So I'll do that in my house every single day. My husband does it every single day too. He's like very on board with all of this. And those like my non-negotiables. And I do them throughout the day, which I think gives people a lot of freedom, because not every day is the same. There's mornings you wake up late and you don't want to be reactive and be like, shit, I just missed my whole morning routine. It's like, okay, great. Like I'll do it later.
Implement throughout the day.
It's okay if you like decide to do a night routine. It's okay if you want to sprinkle it here, there, and everywhere. You have to do what works for you. And when it's really rigid, that's where we become really reactive, because what if something takes longer? What if we wake up late? So we have to leave room for life too. So that's the non-negotiables of like how I start my day is like that every day. But then those are the things that I'm adding in to be very mindful and intentional.
When you do meditation, do you follow a specific guided meditation? Is it you in silence? What does that look like?
It depends on the day.
Okay.
I love guided meditations.
What do you use?
Just from YouTube.
Okay.
Like I'll just
Free.
look them up. Free, easy. Oh my God. I'm like so big on making things simple, because all I want for everybody listening is to just show up for themselves. So like, don't make it complicated. I'll look up like 15-minute like manifestation meditation, or like 15-minute like quantum leap manifestation, or like next level self, or like even if I'm feeling anxious, I'll look up 10-minute anxiety meditation. Like literally there's so many. Anything you want to meditate or feel, like
it's there.
50-minute meditation, just look it up on YouTube. So I do a lot of those. I love walking meditations, which is something that I actually put inside of my courses for my clients. So I'll just listen to my own, which is even better for your brain because you're hearing yourself say it. Or I will do sometimes just silent ones when I feel like my brain's really busy and I'm just like, okay, we need to just
calm.
Sit in silence. So it depends on the day.
Okay. Now you've mentioned your courses.
Yeah.
Break those down. What do those look like for any of our listeners that are like, I'm obsessed with you and I have to work with you and have to understand what's going on? What do your course structures look like?
So I have like an entry level course. It's called The Breadwinner because I am the breadwinner of our household. And it's all about confidence and money mindset because my courses are structured in kind of the awakening that I went through. The first thing I needed to work on was my confidence because that's why I wasn't, the brightest light in the room. That's why I wasn't showing because I didn't feel good about myself. So it walks you through how to build confidence, how to shed those old mindsets. And we start with money manifesting because a lot of times that's where people want to start with their goals. Everybody always has money goals. You want money for the travel. You want money for the bags. You want money for all of the things, right? Maybe you want money to like host more dinner parties, whatever. So we start there because it's just so common. And I have a very strong philosophy. The way we do one thing is the way we do everything. Mm-hmm. So if you start clearing your money mindset, all these other areas are going to open up. So the Breadwinner is like a mini course focused on those two things. My like big daddy program is my 4-month manifestation university, which is called the Mindset Magic and Manifestation Method, which is also the name of my podcast. And that's literally my method for manifesting. So it's get your mindset in check plus define your magic equals making manifestation easy as fuck. Like, because at the end of the day, manifesting is just like showing up and taking action. But if you don't believe in yourself, you're not going to. And if you feel like you are just like kind of like raw dogging life, you're not going to, or like lack of a better word. And so with the magic piece, it's really just tapping into your own spirituality, whether you resonate with being religious or spiritual or a mixture of everything. I have lots of clients on every point of the spectrum, and it's just about finding what resonates with you because that's what's going to support you. So it's 4 months of really deep diving into your mindset and really deep diving into your spirituality to get it into practice so you can show up for your goals. And then my like high level program, and this is more for girls that are like content creators and business owners. I have the Intuition Institute, which is a 6-month mastermind. And we really talk about doing business in life and money your own way because there's so much online. Oh, market this way, run your podcast that way, sell a course this way, do it that. You need this funnel. You need these, like there's so much. You need to market this way. But at the end of the day, if you do it in the way you want to, that's what's going to be successful. And to do that, we have to tap into our own intuition and really learn to listen to ourselves. So we do that in the Intuition Institute. So that's kind of the spectrum.
You got a little bit of everything.
Yeah.
You
Every
really
point
do.
in your journey. Like if you're a baby beginner, I got you. If you're like, I need the manifesting, I got you. If you're like, I'm a business owner and I want to bring in the energy and take this to the next level, I got you. Because that's also super important, but that's a whole other conversation.
Well, and you're living proof.
Yeah.
Of every single thing that you teach other women to do. And that just goes back to like the very beginning too, that you felt so called that you needed to help other women do it because you know firsthand what it feels like to not be living a life that you love. And now you are living every single day the way that you want to live. Yeah. And I think that's so beautiful that you've been able to tap into that in your 20s, young.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of people that have never tapped into that. Mm-hmm. And somebody might be thinking like, okay, I'm too young, or I've already gone through too much life, or I'm too old. And I think it's just really impactful to hear it's never too late.
No.
And it's also never too early.
Exactly.
Like we get this one fucking life. Mm-hmm. And if you're not living it,
what's the fucking point?
What's the point?
And like, if you're not living it in your way that you want, and this is like such a deep conversation we could go into, like, there's so many of us wasting our life doing all the things we think other people want of us, or you look a certain way because you think you have to because of social media, or you act a certain way because you think your family wants you to, but it's like, then you live your whole life and you're not being yourself, or not even discovering yourself, or even discovering 10% of your soul or your potential. And, I have girls that listen to the podcast that are 16 in high school, and they're like, I can't wait to take one of your programs. I want to come on one of your retreats someday. Like, this is changing my life. I manifested an A in my history class. And I'm like, yes, bitch, like, you're going to manifest your first car. Like, they get to take that with them. One of my clients listens to my podcast in her car with her 2-year-old, because she's like, my mission is for my daughter to grow up knowing everything is possible. And then I have clients that are in their 60s that are just starting businesses now because they've just done the mindset work of deciding like, oh yeah, I do have things to share. I do have talents. I do have services I can give to people. And now I actually believe in myself. So at any point you can just pick up and change. And there is that weird lag where you're like, this is awkward. I've never been like this before. Like when I came back from study abroad and my friends were like, you're so annoying. Like what's going on? Because I was just really positive, and they would gossip and I'd be like, let's talk about this. Or like, she's probably just doing her best. Or I would just change the topic and they'd be like, what the hell? Like there is that lag period when you're different, but you have to remember why you're choosing to be different and the outcome you are working towards, which is a life where you actually get to be yourself and actually feel fulfilled.
Girl, everything that you've said in this episode, I'm like, I cannot wait for our listeners to hear this.
It's gonna be so good.
Because you speak with such clarity and such experience. And I just think that it's so valuable to hear from somebody that has lived it and is living proof, instead of like saying, no, like I researched this, I know it. Like I never really had to implement it, but here it is. You're just on another level. And I love that you are giving that gift to other people.
Yeah. I just live this stuff, and
you can tell.
That's why I started sharing, because it was never like, oh, I want to start a business. It was like I blogged at the time, but I was just like writing and like throwing Skyscanner ads on the blog, It was like, wasn't anything too serious. And I was just like, I have to teach this. I never knew it would be a 7-figure company. I never knew that I would be podcasting for 6+ years. I never knew I would be selling out retreats as soon as, like, I didn't know any of that. I just wanted to help and share because I was bursting at the seams. Like, holy shit, people need to know this. And it wasn't popular at the time. Like law of attraction and manifesting has become like very trendy, especially during COVID. That kind of blew up on TikTok, but I was doing it before that. Like it's just been my life. And I think that that's important. And also when you are looking at people online, are they living the things that they're teaching? And you can feel that, you can see it, and you can hear it.
Without a doubt.
Yeah.
Now, one way I like to end our episodes is that for a lot of our guests and a lot of women, it is difficult for them to vocalize something that they're proud of themselves for. I don't think you're going to struggle one bit with this.
Yeah.
But what is something this past week in your personal or your professional life that you are proud of yourself for?
Proud of. Let's see. Well, I'll just talk about what we talked about when we first came in here. So when we were at the Dear Media live event, one of my old neighbors was speaking on a panel, which is so fabulous. Beautiful Sammy. And afterwards, obviously Jordan, of course, is friends with the most beautiful, amazing, talented people. And she's like, I'm going to go talk to Sammy. And I'm like, oh my God, this is my old neighbor. I haven't seen her in 2 years. She probably isn't even going to like know my fucking first name. And her husband was there too. And I'm like, they're not going to remember me. Like I had that limiting belief of like, I'm not memorable enough. Like I'm not important enough for these people to like remember anything about me. And as soon as I walked over, both of them recognized me and like gave me a hug. And I'm just like proud of recognizing that limiting belief and that fear, and also like deciding that that doesn't have to be true about my life. And it's also not true whatsoever at all in any way, shape, or form. And I think that's something to be super proud of recognizing our limiting beliefs and choosing not to side with the things that hold us back.
I love that answer. I love that experience because I watched it all unfold. And obviously from my perspective, I had no idea that that was even something that you were going through your head and worrying about leading up to. And I think that's something that every single one of our listeners can relate to, because we so often get so in our heads.
Right.
And for you to be able to recognize that you're still going to have limiting beliefs, you're still going to struggle with confidence, you're still going to have those thoughts. It's not that you've done all this work and now suddenly you're immune to it.
I'm just perfect.
Right? Wouldn't that be great? But the fact that you can recognize it, work through it, and then move on without that now being something that is part of your identity. It's like, oh, that's just another proof that that's a limiting belief.
Yeah,
and that I'm over that.
And I don't choose to react to that.
No.
Like, I still walked up and said hi, and I didn't know if they were going to recognize me. I was still going to say hi. It's recognizing and choosing to act different, and that's what makes you different.
Yep, it's a choice. Choice that we can all make.
Amen.
Well, this was freaking awesome.
This is so good.
To talk to you all day.
I know. I'm like, we could keep going.
Seriously. I'm so fascinated by your whole life story. So maybe we'll have to do a part two. But there's going to be so much value in this episode. So thank you so much for coming on.
You're welcome.
Put all of your info in the show notes for our girlies to come find you. And thank you for being here. If you guys loved this episode, share it with somebody. Somebody needs to hear.
Somebody needs
to hear this. Share it on social. Both of us will be interacting with you, especially if you want to go and pick this beautiful woman's brain. go slide in her DMs.
Yeah.
Tell her what stuck with you from this episode, because that's the only way that we're going to be able to support each other and grow together. If you want to hold yourself accountable, step outside of your comfort zone and talk about what you learned in this episode.
Yeah.
Talk about how you're applying it into your own life.
It makes it concrete because you're like, this is something I recognize. This is something I want to work on. And when you tell somebody that, it holds you accountable energetically.
Exactly. And that also builds confidence.
Yes.
Which you guys already know that because you've been listening to the More Than podcast. But if you don't follow us already, make sure you're following us on Apple and Spotify, and pimp out your podcast too.
Yeah, I have an amazing podcast. It's called the Mindset, Magic, and Manifestation Podcast. You can find it on literally any platform. You could even tell Amazon Alexa to play it and she will play it. Every single Wednesday, we have an episode of me rambling about mindset and manifestation and my Lambo truck almost every single week. So get ready to be annoyed and also enamored with the vision of me with a Lambo truck.
I love it. And I will link that in the show notes as well as all your social medias.
Perfect.
Thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for
That
having me.
was a freaking blast.
Yay!
I learned so much. I thought that I knew a lot about manifestation.
Yeah.
I didn't.